Hello everybody, my name is Louise Savage. A very warm welcome to my channel, Louise Savage Muses. I've been doing lots of musing about this wonderful trip that I've been doing in Italy. We wanted to share some sunshine and some love, so I have with me my
sunshine and
son,
love.
Simon.
I've never been called that before. Simon, yes, sunshine and love, no.
Yeah, and where are we, Simon, right now?
We are in Ortigia, which is a little island off the island of Sicily, off of Italy.
It is, and it's also known as Syracuse as well, or Syracusa.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've had about halfway through, just over halfway through.
Don't, I'll get
our
upset.
Time together, and we're having a really idyllic time. We've been doing plenty of reading, and we really wanted to share our reading exploits, didn't we, Simon?
We did. I'm a little bit nasal because I've not been well on this trip. Came on holiday to get a cold.
I know, it's a bit, it's very, very frustrating.
We've had a lovely time.
Yeah.
We've been out and about, we've eaten lovely food, we've done all sorts. We're off on a boat later. Mum loves a boat.
I do love a boat. In fact, I
don't
did.
like boats.
A few days ago, I did a boat journey that I've wanted to do since I was a little child. And we travelled, my husband Tim and I, we travelled down from a place called Tropea on the southern coast of mainland Italy, and we took a ferry from near Reggio di Calabria across to Messina. So we travelled by ferry over from mainland to Sicily. What we didn't realise until I investigated a bit further was that in order to do this journey, you travel by train, or we did, you travel by train, your train goes onto the ferry. It's absolutely amazing. And then you get off the train, go around the ferry like you would on a normal ferry crossing, but your train is with you. And then you get back on it and off you go. It was absolutely superb. You would have loved it.
I still don't understand how they do it.
No, well,
how do they get the lines exactly in the right spot?
Because the
rails, end up
rails
just going whoops.
Because the rails go onto the train.
It's very clever. No, but I mean, even still, you've got to get the ferry to match the rails on either side.
Yeah, they like. Yeah, good question.
There we go. Thank you.
Now
you've
made my brain hurt. So that was absolutely amazing.
Use the logo on this one.
And then we travelled down as far as a place called Acireale, which was just north of Catania, and had a couple of nights there. Beautiful town. If you ever get the chance to go, I really recommend it. It's lots and lots of fantastic Baroque churches, very friendly, good food, etc., etc. But now we're in Ortigia, aren't we?
We are, and we joined you on Friday.
You did.
Very late, like literally gone midnight.
Yeah, it was touch and go as to whether you'd managed to get a train here, wasn't it?
It was.
To
but Italy's trains are amazing, and they're always on time and things. And you really loved Tropea, didn't you?
Really loved Tropea. I thought it was absolutely stunning. If you want a kind of beach holiday, the sand there is some of the softest sand I've ever come across, and the sea was really beautifully clean. And it's a holiday town, but it's not been spoilt. It's not particularly touristy. I mean, there are lots of tourists there, but I don't feel it's been ruined by tourism. Whereas when we visited Amalfi the week before, it was so crowded you couldn't really move, and every shop was a tourist shop. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like a little bit like locals had got a bit fed up with the tourism as well, which I completely understand. I think it must be overwhelming when you've got hordes of people turning up by boat and bus and goodness knows what else every day. Anyway, there we are.
Let's focus on the positives. Mum loved Trappier so much that she's promised she's taking the entire family there next year.
Would
I was
like
going
to
to
do
say
that.
all of you, but not all of you. Literally, just if you're any of our family members, apparently you're invited. So that's exciting.
Very exciting. Anyway, what have you been reading, Simon, since you arrived in this beautiful land?
The book that I took for the plane, because I don't really like flying. I'm not awful with it. I just am not 100%. I'm a control freak basically, and I don't like being in a tin can, travelling several thousand feet above the Earth's surface with I start to get really claustrophobic. Anyway, so I picked up Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I do this every time. I always want to say C.A. Sosby. S.A. Cosby, which Sue and Cindy, who are two of my lovely patrons, they recommended this to me, and then when I mentioned that I'd got 3 of his books, excuse me, we are literally in the middle of the city, so if you can hear haggling, heckling, all of those things, then yeah. But I was recommended this, and then when I got, the publishers kindly sent me some, and when I mentioned them in a hall, people went bonkers, like, you've got to read him, you've got to read him. And he is brilliant. This is about 2 fathers whose sons were a gay couple, and they have both been murdered. One was black, one was white, and they want to get vengeance, and in doing so they look at all of the nuances around homophobia, both for white people but also for people of colour, and how much worse that can be. But also both of the fathers are ex-cons, and it shows how one of them got like 5 years for like stealing something really basic, who was black, and yet he would have got, no sorry, the other way around, the white guy got a very short sentence for something he did, and the black guy had a massive sentence for something he did that was much less. So it's looking at all those things. I wasn't expecting it to be quite so violent, and there is some quite frank sexual content in this, so I know you won't like that, Mum.
No, I won't. It's interesting actually, while you've been reading it, you've said that quite consistently. You've said you've been shocked by the violence in it.
Only because it's not the usual thing that I read. Like, I haven't,
Yeah.
I'm going to say I've been shocked, but I haven't actually minded it.
No, well,
I've quite enjoyed it, and I will say sometimes I get what he's doing in terms of pointing out how, you know, homophobia is such an awful thing, and racism, but sometimes it feels a little bit, rather than sleight of hand or death, sometimes it's a bit like a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
But I also thought what he does in here about transgender people is absolutely brilliant, and I've really, so I've got a lot of respect for him, and I'm very excited to read the other 3 that I have in due course.
So that sounds like a really good holiday read.
Yes.
Gripping, making you think.
Yeah.
All those kind of
Perfect.
things. Excellent. So I have been reading Elodie Harper's The House with the Golden Door. Sorry, I'm just hide him for a minute. It doesn't, you can't really see it against the blue sky.
Just
actually.
a little bit closer in front of my face.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
a bit no closer like that. There you go.
Oh yeah, that's it. It's absolutely beautiful cover. Now this is the second in a trilogy. So we both read The Wolf Den, didn't we? During lockdown, I think it was.
And interviewed Elodie Harper.
And interviewed Elodie, who was absolutely delightful, wasn't she? So I was really looking forward. I brought this to Italy because it's, you know, it's Roman. It's based on the story of a Roman prostitute, and in The Wolf
There's
Den,
got lots of sex in it.
actually, do you know what? She always seems to, and I think very cleverly, closes the door. She does.
That's the
And
Mills
I-
and Boone term, isn't it? You
Yeah.
close the bedroom door.
I rather like that.
Nobody can see that, don't worry about that.
Yeah, no, okay.
Another book's flapping. She's being very
It is.
professional.
Trying to be professional, trying.
You don't have to be. It's YouTube. It's meant to be fun.
Well, it is fun. You can be fun and professional at the same time, I feel.
No, that's true. Anyway, sorry. Moving on. This will all vanish.
It won't. It won't.
Oh yeah, you've got to put it live today.
Yeah, I'm not as good at editing as you are. So the house with the golden in the Wolf Den, the main character Amara is a prostitute in the most notorious brothel in Pompeii. She's a slave, so has absolutely no control over who she's being forced to sleep with, etc., etc. And she forms a network of friends within this horrific atmosphere. And what I really enjoy about these books is the sisterhood aspect, there are, you know, there's this community of women, and they are in dire straits, but their relationships are incredibly strong and powerful, and perhaps more significant than they might be in other circumstances. But there's also tricks and betrayal as well.
Oh,
so
tricks and
it's
betrayal.
there's a real this book sort of seethes with who can you trust, who can you not trust. And Amara at this point has actually been freed from slavery, so she is now a freed woman. But a freed woman can only survive if they've got a good patron. Now she has a patron, and she is expected, he provides her with the house with the golden door, and she's expected to be at his beck and call and to sleep with him, obviously. So she's, in a sense, she's become, not that there is much of a difference in my view, because your body is still not your own, but she's gone from being a prostitute perhaps to being more like a concubine.
A kept woman.
A kept woman. And so this house represents tremendous freedom to her, but is also a bit of a prison in some ways as well. And she, having become freed herself, she kind of wants to spread that love. So this book is it's her fight for survival, really, in a space where I think she thought she was going to be so much more comfortable and life was going to be so much more straightforward. I did, when you arrived, you asked me how I was getting on with it, and I did have a stage where I got a little bit bogged down with it. I felt it could have done with being a little bit briefer maybe, but it's a fantastic holiday read, and I just really like the way that Amara is not faultless. She makes lots of mistakes, and she's a very sort of human character. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And then will you be heading to the third?
I will be reading the third. I can't not find out what happens next because it's left at a very important date, shall we say.
Oh, I'm intrigued as well, because I didn't realise Elodie Harper writes crime, and she'd written crime novels before these came out, so I'd quite like to read her crime. I will head to that at some point.
Yeah. No, as I say, it's a Sunday Times bestseller, and it is a page turner. And I think that's why at one point I just felt the pace slowed a little bit. I could have done with that, that maintenance of action, but I did really enjoy it.
Well, I've just finished this very morning because I have had a little bit of bed. Well, I've been in bed quite a lot the last couple of days, what with being a little bit ill, but don't worry, I'm getting better. And so, but what's been really nice is...
That's called milking it.
It is. But it is, what's been really nice is I've been spending my time, weirdly, in Syracuse through fiction, because I have just finished Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon, which is set in 13, but I'm questioning myself, 412 BC in Syracuse, where the Greeks have what looked like was going to be a really the Athenians, have had what looked like to be a promising invasion. There were thousands of them, and they failed, and they have ended up trapped and kept in a quarry where they are being slowly starved. And we meet two potters who are both really obsessed with Euripides. Is it Euripides who wrote all the plays?
The playwright.
He
wrote Medea.
Well, this is the thing. So what they decide to do is they want to get these Greeks to put on a play of Medea, but actually they end up doing two plays because they also do the Women of Troy. And the reason for this is Gelon, one of the men, is really obsessed that even though the relationship between Greece and Italy is so, well, it wasn't Italy at the time, but it's so bad that these need to be saved, and this is the only way he's ever going to see them. So him, along with Lampo, who's our main narrator, decide to they go and feed the Greeks first of all, and then they decide to put on this play. And it gives you a really interesting insight into Medea. It gives you a really interesting insight into what was going on at the time. The only thing that's odd is they're potters, but they never make a pot. So I was a bit like...
Well, I suppose they're enslaved in a quarry.
No, the two guys who are going there.
Sorry.
And they never made a pot, which I was a little bit surprised at. Because ceramics and stuff are really big where we are now, aren't they? There's lots of real... Yeah. But it's really given me an insight into the quarries that we're going to be going to tomorrow. And Mum's been very kind because she's been practically chomping at the bit to get to an archaeological site, this one in particular, but she's let us hold off until I'd read this. And I think it's going to be really interesting going there because the way the quarry is described is this place of pure evil. and I think it's going to be interesting to see it in real life. What I also loved about this, I'll stop in a second, is that the author is Italian-Irish. And so when he's talking about like one of the slave girls he wants to, she's like, well, I can't ask a da. And so there's this lovely Irish lilt within it. It's also quite funny, and at the end made me very upset. Like I got quite emotionally. I didn't think I was as emotionally involved as I was.
Don't give anything away.
I'm not. But 2:39 I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. And then I got absolutely like, I think what he's doing about how culture unites us is really powerful. So
for me,
and I'm now handing this over to you.
because I'm desperate to read this because many a moon ago I did read some Thucydides, who was an ancient Athenian historian, and he actually describes the Sicilian expedition that is the backdrop to this novel, and he talks about the captives in the quarries in Syracuse, and he also says that some of the captives were freed because they could quote Euripides, which I always felt was really quite, as a lover of literature, that sends a bit of a shiver down your spine, that the idea of, it's like, if you could quote Shakespeare, you'd be saved. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this, so that's brilliant, and I've nearly run out of books as well.
We've also got some lovely heckling going on across the way. There's a little bit of a debate going on about the flat they're cleaning.
Oh.
I don't know much Italian, but I
How
could hear
have you picked up on that?
Oh, I could hear.
Your earwigging is a real skill.
Well, it wasn't because I wasn't listening to what you were saying, by the way, just to clarify that. Anyway, is this your current reader?
This is my current
Can I
read.
just say you've chosen book covers that are very similar?
Yes, I know, I realise that.
Blue and gold.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And also you've been wearing some blue and gold.
Yes, I have. And I don't know whether that's... So this is the cover that Simon's...
so
that you can see it. This is the cover that Simon's talking about. So this is as long... I think the reason I chose these covers was partly... I wonder if I was drawn to them because I was expecting blue sky and beautiful things. I don't know.
Your golden child.
You'd think he'd have grown out of this by now, wouldn't you? So this is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh. I think that's, I don't know. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
This has been huge on Bookstagram.
Yeah, and she's a Canadian, Syrian Canadian, I think. And this was her debut novel, and it has been really, really successful. And interestingly, I hadn't realised when I bought it, because I've seen it so much on Instagram, I hadn't realised that it was aimed at, certainly being, the publishers were aiming it at young adults. And that's made me really rethink as I've been reading the book, because I think I said to you when I started it, I was slightly disappointed, because it's a story about, it's set in Syria, it's set in Homs in Syria, which was incredibly badly destroyed by the Syrian regime under Assad, who sadly I think is still in power. And so you've got the Syrian resistance versus the government. And the main character, Samara, is a young woman. She's only, I think, 18 or 19. And she was training as a pharmacist, and then the war broke out, and most of her family have been killed, and these aren't spoilers, this is all, the backdrop to the story. And she is volunteering in a hospital in the city, and it is gut-wrenching. I mean, she's a pharmacist, but she's actually performing surgery because there's nobody else to do it. So she's kind of learnt on the hoof how to do all these amputations and goodness knows what else. So it's a brilliant book in terms of conveying the absolute horror and devastation and the trauma, not just for the people who are wounded, but for the doctors and the people who are, trying to keep them alive. And I think as a young person's introduction, sorry, another bit of transport going past.
Honestly, they scoot through these narrow lanes. It's quite the thing.
They like to rev, don't they? So I think it's a fantastic introduction for a young person into that world. And she doesn't hold back, which I really admire. I think it's very, very hard-hitting in terms of looking at the violence and also trauma. So Samara is suffering from PTSD, and then she meets a young man who she recognises, and I'm not going to give away why she recognises him. He says, no, we've never actually met. And a friendship develops between them. And he's a young photographer, so he's been filming the riots to send them out onto YouTube so that the outside world is aware of what's happening in Syria. And she invites him into the hospital to film because she says, you know. And the other thing is, she's got this massive dilemma as to whether she should leave Syria or stay. She's got the opportunity with her sister-in-law, who's heavily pregnant and the only member of her family left, and one of her closest friends. She's got the opportunity to leave by boat, but she's leaving behind, you know, the bodies of her parents. She doesn't know whether her brother's alive or not, you know. So it's brutally hard hitting, but also there's quite a sort of naive romance to this as well. So although I've really enjoyed it, I've found it quite repetitive.
Didn't you say that she really gets into like the pharmaceutical element a
Yeah,
little bit too much?
and I felt that. I think that Zoulfa herself is a pharmacist, but I felt that was being, when she was talking about her body or someone else's body, and she'd be, you know, talking about different sort of bones or parts of the body. For me, it didn't quite ring true, and that's probably me because she's a pharmacist, so she should know. But I did feel that was being that sort of the medical side of it was a bit forced for me. I've also found some of the dialogue a little bit romanticised, I would say. But then again, I think if I'd read this when I was in my teens, I would have absolutely gobbled it up. I think I'm reading it with a much more critical eye now. So yeah, a lot of repetition, but I think that's there because of the nature of the audience, perhaps. And just a little bit cliched in places, I'd say. But I'm glad I've read it, and I do think, you know, this is a part of the world where the war is still going on, and again, it's been overshadowed by Ukraine, it's been overshadowed by what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and yet this is still ongoing. And I think the more that we can educate each other about these things, the better. So I think it's a very necessary book from that point of view as well.
Am I allowed, just because you mentioned Ukraine, can I just do a little plug?
Yeah, of course you can.
To say that I'm working on a campaign where we're crowdfunding to buy, renovate and stock a mobile library to drive from the UK to the Ukrainian border, and if you'd like to help us with that, that would be amazing. Sorry to do that on your channel, but I just think it's
I think it's a very important project, and you know, at a time when I think the Ukrainian crisis is starting to fade from the media a little bit because of obviously the scale of what's happening elsewhere in the world, and that's cyclical. That happens, doesn't it? And it's hard. You know, it's hard. We all have a limited amount of money. Where do you place it? You know? But I think a very worthy cause.
Mum did offer to drive the bus.
I did.
I put that forward. We'll see what
I'd
happens.
love to do that.
Anyway.
Whether anybody who's in the bus with me would enjoy it, I'm not quite so sure.
Shall I briefly mention
please,
that? So
yes.
I started a book that I decided isn't for right now, and that's partly also because I have got, as I mentioned, not to milk it again, but a bit of a head cold at the moment. But I started The Night Alphabet by Joelle Taylor, which is one of the books that I'm most excited for this year. It came out actually early this year and I didn't get to it because, you know, sometimes when you're excited about it, you leave it because you're worried that maybe it won't be as good as you've made it in your head. And I started it this morning and it was just a little bit too experimental for where my brain's at. So this is going back to the UK with me and I'll read it when we're back. But I think my next read is going to be when I popped good old Naked David in it.
When I opened his book the other day, he gave me a health warning. He said, "Mum, be careful when you open the book."
I mean, look, don't look. But what I think I'm going to start, well, I've read the first few pages of it, is The Tower by Flora Carr, which I'm going to try and finish before we go back because I'd like to hand this over to Mum, because one of your favourite historical figures is Mary Queen of Scots, and this is all about Mary Queen of Scots, and it starts off with her having a wee in a bush.
Oh, does it?
So, there's a way to begin a book. But yeah, and also I love the fact that she's got a French, this I think Flora Carr's brilliant, I don't know if it's true or not, but she's got a French, what would you call her, not housemaid, but like lady in waiting or whatever,
Right.
called Cuckoo, which I just instantly, I'm like, I think
really
that's lovely.
sweet.
So
Yeah.
the only thing I'm quite nervous about, no chapters.
No chapters.
I don't like books with no
No, I
chapters,
don't
but
actually.
I'm excited for this. I think it'll be.
You need that cutting off point, don't you?
You do.
You need to kind of know when it's. I
yeah,
like it
because,
when you're
like-
signalled that you can.
Well, there's lots of breaks,
Oh, okay.
so that'll help. But it's also set across 4 seasons, and it says they are imprisoned but not contained. So I'm
Ooh.
intrigued for what period.
Well, I really want to read that, having read Young Queens by Leah Redmond
yeah.
Chang for the non-fiction Women's Prize for non-fiction, because I've read quite a lot of fiction about Mary Queen of Scots. So having read that book where she is one, it's a trio of queens and she's one of them, I'm really interested now to go back to a fictionalised version and see how I respond to that. So
Well, we'll be talking about the Women's Prize for Fiction and for Non-Fiction in about a month's time, won't we?
Very excited. I've still got the shortlist to read for fiction.
And I've got the shortlist to read for the non-fiction.
Yeah.
And then we can get together and rank both of them and see. In fact, we think we've got a date in the diary to try and film that. So end of May, but it'll be with you before the winner's announced on the 13th of June.
Absolutely, and obviously a very exciting point in the year for us. But we have got to dash, haven't we, Simon?
I do, because I really also need to blow my nose.
You
I don't
need
want
to blow
do
your
that on
nose.
camera.
And where are we off to this afternoon?
We're off on a boat trip
We
because
are.
Mum loves a boat. I don't love a boat in fiction, but I do like one in real life. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I never understood your boat thing in books.
It's because anything. I've told you about how I don't like if you can't see anything other than ocean. I just think about what's under there, and that makes me feel creepy because there's probably a kraken or something.
And you wanted to go on a glass-bottom boat.
I did. That would be fine because I can see. And I mean, I have swam/paddled with sharks. I don't know what my issue is, but anyway,
No, I don't.
moving on.
Yeah, well, there we are. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for sticking with us during this lovely patch of sunshine.
It's a unusually
we have on the
short one
terrace.
for us, Louise. You've done quite well.
Yes, we
25
have
minutes.
done very, very well.
Well done.
Yes. Happy reading, everybody. I hope you managed to find a spot of sun somewhere. And I expect the next time we'll be chatting, we'll be back in the UK.
I think you will be.
Raining. Might be. We'll see how we go. Because I'm travelling on a Wednesday, aren't I?
Oh yeah, that's true.
So we'll see how we go. Anyway, take care, everybody. Happy reading.
Bye.
Bye. Bin wagon spoiled at the moment.
It's just-